Hello, I'm Bruce LaBruce. I'm at the Berlinale in the Panorama section with my film, The Visitor.
Hello and welcome to the 38th Teddy Award. My name is Jan Felix Wuttig and today I'm here with director Bruce LaBruce to talk about his film The Visitor. Bruce, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for The Visitor.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah.
Oh.
What a film. It's, well, on a surface level, it tells the story of a man coming to the shores of the Thames in a suitcase, inserting himself in a sort of bourgeois family and transforming the entire household through a series of explicit sexual encounters. Mm-hmm. It feels both very joyful and very angry at the same time, I felt.
That's good. I've been feeling both of those a lot lately.
Yeah. That translated well into the film. Maybe you could start with telling me how the idea for the film came to you.
Yeah, it's it was actually something, an obsession of mine, Pasolini's Teorema. I did a theater piece at the Howe Theater years ago, like 2008, I think it was. And I investigated, it was with the Cheap Collective with my friends Susanna Zaxa and Mark Siegel, and it investigated 4 films with a similar theme. So it was Fassbinder's Whitey, John Huston's Reflections in the Golden Eye, and Teorema, and Joseph Losey's Boom. And so each one features a character who comes to a kind of family unit, and usually a kind of a hustler type character, and he ends up disrupting the family, having sex with them, and transforming them in some way. Yeah. So I was making all these parallels between the films, and the one Teorema really is one of my favorite films from that era, and I love the trilogy he made, Porcel, Teorema, and Salo, his last 3 films. Yeah. Because they investigate, you know, the kind of disconnectedness of the bourgeoisie and the kind of disconnection they feel with each other and with alienation from society in general, and they're sexually repressed, and he does transform them. So I decided to do an update of it. Essentially, the visitor becomes a black refugee, which is, I wanted to make a kind of a queer updating of Teorema while remaining true to it, but also making it my version of it, you know, with queer aesthetics and queer kind of politics inserted into it. So it's very contemporary in terms of what's going on in Britain and Germany. You know,
it felt that way.
Yeah,
certainly.
And Yeah, and the visitor is, he's both like the angel of death and the angel of transformation, you
Yeah,
know. And,
yeah.
yeah.
One of the first things that I really loved about the film is, well, your actors.
Mm.
They each and every one of them, they bring an incredible physicality to the film. And at the same time, they have this, you know, they are playing roles which are such sort of grotesque and funny caricatures of stereotypes.
Mm-hmm. They're kind of archetypes.
Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit about how you found your actors for the parts?
Yeah, this film for me was one of my, it was almost a throwback to my guerrilla filmmaking days. And so it was done for this amazing British arts organization based in London called Apolitical, who work with artists who don't fit into the kind of art mainstream because their work is either too difficult or too controversial or too complicated to produce. So I was just serendipitously got connected with them, and then my two of my producers helped me cast. It was all cast by Zoom. Like I live in Toronto, so I didn't even actually meet any of the performers in person until the first day on set. You know, but I wanted to not get traditional actors. None of them are really professional actors, but they're performers. They're more like queer performers who do body modification. Some of them. The only professional was Bishop Black, who plays the visitor, and he's done a lot of porn, and I've made a porn film with him before and worked with him on some photo shoots and stuff. So he was the only one that I had previously known. And the rest are, I mean, yeah, they're just, they're kind of well-known figures in the London kind of nightlife scene, and they do extreme performance work, and which involves sex and nudity, and of course the suspensions, the hooked suspensions of their bodies and stuff like that. So yeah, I just wanted to work. I often worked with people who aren't really professional actors, and and besides Bishop, they'd never done like actual porn before, so it was very. They were very adventurous. They were very kind of like committed. And there's not much dialogue in the film, but then there's one scene, the dinner scene, where they have these long monologues. Exactly. And I was like so like blown away when they showed up, you know, and had their lines completely memorized and gave these very heartfelt like monologues and they really understood the film very thoroughly and gave me exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I was blown away by Bishop Black's performance specifically because he has such a presence in the film. You know, he embodies sort of that I don't know that it's a threat, but it's also a sort of promise that he brings to the family.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was trying to get into like Pasolini's kind of dialectical thinking, which so there's a lot of contradictions, a lot of seeming kind of paradoxes. So he's kind of very humble, but he's also very arrogant in some ways, you know, and he's very dominant and controlling, but he can be kind of like passive as well. So he did a really good job of embodying that.
Now, for your work with the sex scenes, you're obviously not new to conducting the work that is needed for explicit sex scenes. For this, you worked with an intimacy coordinator as well, which is sort of, at least in mainstream filmmaking, still a relatively new practice. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about how you approached shooting the sex scenes.
Yeah. I'd only worked with one intimacy coordinator before, which was on a film I did for Erica Lust, a porn film called The Affairs of Lydia. And it was a woman who had never done intimacy coordination for a porn before, only for mainstream films. So I kind of had to spend a lot of time explaining to her like how porn works, and you know, because it's a whole different set of intimacy of kind of circumstances with concerning consent and intimacy, and it's much more complicated. And so But we really lucked out. I don't know. My producers found this woman, Lydia Ravissio, I think her name is, and she was the best. I mean, she had actually was born in the town that Pasolini was assassinated in, at Ostia, and she knew a total kind of Pasolini aficionado, and she contributed a lot to me, the things I didn't know about Pasolini, and she just taught me what a real intimacy coordinator can do, which is not just kind of like, you know, this idea of oh no, you can't do that, like a kind of police, sex police, you know, but more like just getting everyone into the spirit of the scene. We had like a little kind of room dedicated to her, you know, kind of a green room where the actors would go with her to discuss today's scene. Of course, we already took into consideration chemistry between the performers and who would perform with whom. It's just kind of common sense stuff, like making an atmosphere on the set that's conducive to people being relaxed and having sex. Kind of more mundane things like making sure they have, like, you know, towels and wipes and things that they need. But just for her, it was more of a kind of, dare I say, kind of like a spiritual kind of thing with people bonding and kind of really digging into their kind of their desires and being comfortable with, like, expressing it on camera. So she was awesome. She was like a really important part of the team, for sure.
I was also quite surprised, sort of the first time I read up on intimacy coordinators, that, you know, I think one intimacy coordinator said in an interview that basically if I've done my job well, I don't need to say anything during the shoot, because I've created an atmosphere where things are clear, and people feel comfortable with each other, and the scene works through that.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, my producer Jürgen Brüning and I have made a lot of porn films together, and we used to do that kind of thing more just intuitively, like as the director and producer, like we'd make sure everyone was on the same page and was not doing anything they weren't comfortable with. But back in the day, I would talk to people more like as they were performing and kind of like direct them, which is not as common now. I mean, it's more common to just allow the scene to play out spontaneously and not surprise somebody with something that they're not, you know, that wasn't discussed, or, you know, it's more planned out in a way, and I think more organic maybe now.
During the sex scenes, you portray a lot of, like, sort of derivations of popular political slogans, like open borders, open legs, or
fuck for the many, not the few.
Exactly.
Sexual anarchy in the UK.
Keep calm and fuck on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How much of the film, I mean, to me, as I watched it, the film was a lot of fun, you know? That was one aspect of it. But at the same time, how much of the film would you say is also kind of a claim or a demand for political change?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of my kind of aesthetics that I do is like agitprop kind of stuff with a lot of slogans and flashing slogans. I've done it in other films like The Raspberry Reich and a porn film I did called The Purple Army Faction. And so it's, in a way, it's very directly political. So at the beginning of the film, when the visitor emerges at the tents, you hear on the soundtrack all the a voiceover of this very, you know, posh British accent, this man, and he's saying all we took actual things that right-wing politicians have said about immigration and immigrants, very racist things, very kind of like ignorant things, and we kind of strung them all together,
Yeah.
and they're on and so when he's talking about sending the kind of using racial epithets and about sending refugees back to Africa, back to Rwanda, and kind of and the sexual kind of the film is partly about this kind of sexualized other, this kind of fear of the other and their sexuality being not only fearful of it but kind of seduced by it at the same time, and kind of projecting this weird fantasy on the black visitor of being this kind of sexually potent kind of figure. But all that dialogue was really taken from right-wing politicians, and then a lot of the slogans were actual Labour Party slogans over the past 10 years, which I corrupted and added. Like they had one of their slogans was "Open Borders," and so I had added "Open Borders, Open Legs." They had "For the many, not the few" was one of their slogans, and I added "Fuck for the many, not the few." So there's that bit of playing around with the idea of how politics gets reduced to political sloganeering, and on the left as well, and then Pasolini's original Tia Rima was a different society then. It was more based on like industrial kind of oppression of workers, and which he has like in the film, which I mean still exists, but it's not really it's kind of an old-fashioned model. Now it's about tech and kind of these multinational corporations, and so it's more. It's kind of the focus is more about the alienation of the family unit, and the repression. It's something I talk about in my films a lot, which is Freud's idea of family romance and how the nuclear family unit has all these sexual tensions in it, which are very fraught with shame and repression and sort of
incest and all that.
And so just kind of having the visitor liberate them from this all this kind of shame and kind of repressive guilt that they have about their sexuality. And it's queered as well. So it's amazing that the daughter is played by. I wanted some of the characters to be, directly queer, and Ray Falar, who plays the daughter, is transmasculine and identifies as transmasculine, and so to have her and the maid, Luca Federica, who cross dresses as the maid in the movie. It adds like a kind of, I kind of re-queer the original Pasolini using modern, more contemporary queer aesthetics and queer, playing with queer identity.
Now, throughout your career, you've sort of, well, if I may say so, you've always or many times kind of mixed punk politics and porn aesthetics and queer narratives, and you sort of move between, let's say, more traditional ways to tell a story and at times very disruptive sort of imagery. I guess my question is, if you had a name for where you are now in your filmmaking, what would it be?
I mean, I really try to make my films in the spirit of like the avant-garde and experimental filmmaking. Even when I make, and I also try to really mix it up and not be pigeonholed into one type of filmmaking. So I go back and forth. I go back and forth between working for porn companies and making explicit porn films that are meant more, designed for a porn audience, and then making features in Canada that are get funding from the government and are bigger budget and like my films Gerontophilia and Saint Narcisse, which are union movies, so they're more industry style movies, which I enjoy. And then I make these other crazy movies that are totally guerrilla, like that's the pleasure. That was the big pleasure of working with Apolitical. They just were pushing me to. There was no kind of like no producers looking over my shoulder, suggesting that I, tone things down or anything. They were really wanted me to go for it, and it's rare when you have those kinds of that kind of creative freedom. Maybe sometimes for the, to your detriment. I don't know, but.
True.
But in terms of just like being open and going from several $1 million budgets to like super no budget back and forth, it's difficult to do because you have to kind of recalibrate your whole way of working and thinking. So I enjoyed doing this project more down and dirty, as we used to say, and but then we ended up having the most amazing locations and in the film, but it was all made in the spirit of experimentalism, and I didn't have much of a script going into into shooting, which I've done before, like with my film LA Zombie, just kind of an outline almost, and working like that, flying by the seat of your pants, just kind of working into more intuitively. For me is a spirit of kind of more experimental and avant-garde cinema.
Yeah, and I think that translated really well into an incredible experience that you have with the film. I remember like months ago, I think people were talking in my circle of people about The Visitor, and it's like almost like an air of fear and excitement going through the city, nice. Kind of talking about The Visitor, and what is it?
Oh, cool.
What's it going to be like?
That was well, I hope it lives up to the hype.
It does very much. Okay, Bruce, thank you so much for the talk. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you. And
same here.
I wish you all the best for the premiere, and I am sure that people are going to love it.
Yay. Thank you.